Today we're going to be talking about CDAT activities that are targeted towards young people and how CDATs can most effectively frame their messages to be effective in terms of engaging with young people, keeping them engaged and communicating effectively around drug and alcohol related harms. And we're really lucky to have Vivienne Lee from SDECC, which is the Sydney Drug Education and Counselling Centre, with us. So welcome, Vivienne. Thanks very much for giving us your time. Much appreciated.
And thank you, Dennis, for having me.
Thanks. And can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, I am a drug and alcohol counsellor at SDECC, St Leonard's office. I joined the SDECC in 2018. Prior to that, I have worked with the young people and the families for 5 years. So altogether, just a little bit under 10 years working in this area.
Wonderful, thank you. And no doubt in the course of that work you encounter a lot of situations where young people are being harmed by the use of drugs and alcohol. So can you tell us a little bit about what those harms are?
I will say one of the top harm around young people using alcohol and other drugs will be around the binge drinking trend that is among our young people. Over the weekend, alcohol use, which coupled with the polysubstance use, which is also in line with the 2019 National Drug Strategy Household Survey. There is a decrease in young people's first initiation of alcohol use and less frequency of use in alcohol. But there's also an increase in binge drinking over the weekend. We consistently see the same pattern that is happening on the northern North Shore and at the northern beaches as well, and which is coupled with the polysubstance use.
Okay. So that's really interesting. So your experience is consistent with what's seen across the country, which is that young people are starting to drink a little later than usual, and maybe during the week not so much drinking, but when it comes to weekend there's an increase in binge drinking and use of polysubstances. In other words, people using multiple substances, including maybe alcohol and other drugs. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and the feedback we often get from young people is that alcohol is a legal substance and it's normalised in society, used as a social tool among friends or a relaxed tool after a hard day of work or study. So therefore, there is that misconception of alcohol is safe. So that's what we also see that quite often among our young person's idea around alcohol use.
Yeah. So that notion that alcohol is safe, in the reality is that it in many cases it is safe, but in many other cases it's not safe. And so some young people do experience harms associated with their use of drugs and alcohol. So can you tell us a bit about the harms that concern you the most in the work that you do?
In the context of alcohol use, especially the binge drinking and the polysubstance use over the weekend, what we've seen is that the increase of young people engaging in risk-taking behaviour, which can lead to accidental suicide and harm to themselves and to others in the communities, and increased violence and also increased crime.
Okay. So those are quite serious harms that are experienced by some people in those situations. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So looking at CDATs in terms of the focus of their activities being primarily to try and prevent the harms associated with those substances among young people generally and other members of the community, what kinds of considerations need to be borne in mind if a CDAT is planning an activity that is targeted at helping people to understand those harms?
For a lot of our young people, they actually have a lot of knowledge around substance use as well. I think it would be helpful for CDAC also creating events where young people can share their knowledge, that we can hear from their point of view and how they see substance use. At the same time, is having activities that are fun, engaging, rather than just focusing on the advising, the fear-driven type of advising or ad. We know it's not working, so therefore we're kind of inviting the young person in a way and having a interaction when we can hear what they have to say and hear their voices around the substance use.
Yeah, that's really great advice and really important. If we want to engage young people, we've got to be listening to them, not lecturing them. We've got to be helping ourselves to understand where they're coming from and give them an opportunity and a platform where they can express what's going on for them. And how do we go about doing that? How do we go about creating that kind of safe environment for them to be able to open up and begin to talk freely about the things that concern them?
For some of our young people, what I found was just the simple things around creating some games, and as we use social media, bringing social media where we have multiple choice questions where we can open up the floor to everyone. And what we found is really helpful when we do that. We can exchange knowledge, what we know about certain substances, but at the same time not feel like this is in a classroom environment, and creating that safety and fun activity, just creating that relationship and trust while playing. And this is also helps us to recognize that person's strength rather than just focusing on the drug and alcohol use alone for the young person. It's also acknowledging when it comes to drug and alcohol, a lot of our young people feel stigmatized in their communities, also in the school environment they are in. So therefore, if we can create that space where they can also show us who they are, they still have passion in the things they like to do. Therefore, I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah. So that's a really good point, that the importance of avoiding stigma, because if a person feels that people are stigmatizing drug and alcohol use, then they're much less likely to open up about the concerns or the questions that they may have around that for fear of being stigmatized themselves. Yeah.
We also see some of the young people may also not putting their hand up for support because of the stigma. And so, which in a way, it becomes a self-fulfilled prophecy in a way. And if you say, this is who I am, I might have just lived the way as it is.
Yeah, that's a really important point to bear in mind. Well, Vivienne, look, that's really wonderful advice that you've given us to share with CDATs in terms of how to most effectively communicate and engage with young people in a way that creates a safe space, an opportunity for them to speak and not just sit and listen to what other people have to say about drug and alcohol use, and for them to feel that they can share their experiences, their concerns, and ask questions that they may have. Thank you very much for your time. It's been really valuable.
Thank you, Dennis.
Okay.